Welcome to Creation in the 21st Century. I'm your host, Carl Ball, founder and director of the Creation Evidence Museum in Glen Rose, Texas. The title to today's program is Sleight of Hand. Now, I'm sure we're all familiar with the old gambling trick, the trick of cards, where the hand is quicker than the eye, and what we thought we saw is not really what was happening all along. There are tricks played on kids, there are tricks played on adults that are really sleight of hand. Well, now, this program takes biblical truth and verifies that with scientific investigation. My guest and I began with a very objective, and we still have a very objective outlook on life. We want the scriptures to be accurate, and we've found that they are accurate. We want the scientific data and the research to be better than a sleight of hand. Now, we're considering this matter of creation versus evolution. And we're taught, by and large, by the entire academic community, and I say by and large, while there are thousands of exceptions to an evolutionary posit to academic procedure. But in general, in the academic community, we're taught that evolution has produced us, that we began with inorganic chemistry, a rock, and over a period of time, somehow, no one knows how, but somehow that inorganic chemistry, that rock, as it biodegraded, was able to organize living compounds and living cells and organisms, and here we are. Well, really, this is a sleight of hand movement and emphasis. You see, there is variation. Variation within each of us, variation within the various tribes of peoples, variations within our own families, variation within the dog kind, variation within canine and feline. We have variation within the horse kind. We have the bovine, the cows, variation within that particular set of kinds of organisms. We have variation within the elephant kind, proboscidea. We have the elephant, we have African and Indian elephants, we have the woolly mammoths, we have the mastodons, and we certainly have variation. But all of this is a horizontal variation, either reshuffling the genetic information that is already there, or mutating or deleting information. There is never an increase of information, and what this really is a sleight of hand emphasis. We admit, certainly we change. Well, then we have a definition of change as being evolution, so therefore evolution is true. That is the mantra of our current philosophic mindset. Well, we certainly do have variation. We have change, but again, that change does not produce higher organisms, and this is a sleight of hand. Well, to discuss this today is one of my finest friends, Professor John Hefner. Professor Hefner, again, welcome to the program.
Well, thank you. I always like coming.
Well, you're liked here and you're liked there. The audience worldwide appreciates all that you have to say. And this audience should know, in case there's someone listening new today that has not met you before, you have almost a 4-decade professional career as a mathematician. You're head of a math department at a very high-ranked high school and adjunct professor at a fine university. And by the way, you're a kinesiologist. Of course, you knew that. You have trained and produced state champions, so you know how the body works. And you know how math works. You're a specialist in trigonometry and pre-calculus and calculus. What else should this audience know about you?
Well, you pretty well said it. I teach math on adjunct faculty at Kilgore College and head the department of math at Kilgore High School. And since 1990, I've been very interested in the creation-evolution issue because I see it as foundational to faith, and I see it as the crossroads, if you will, of where many people stand. And depending on their decision on what they believe about their origin, it sets them on a path, a worldview that is different from the other path if they choose differently.
And the consequences not only affect this life, and the choices we make, but the life to come as well. Well, now tell me, I introduced the program as sleight of hand. Do you think there's any emphasis today where a statement is made that is not really justified, and thus we have microevolution, or variation within horizontal boundaries, and reshuffling, interpreted as evidence for macroevolution without substantiation?
Yes.
Well, that's sleight of hand.
Yes, it is. And I'm willing to say that some do it inadvertently.
Yes.
Not a malicious intent. Teachers frequently just teach what they were taught.
Certainly.
And frequently, though,
in the book.
Exactly. And you ask someone who's teaching evolutionary concepts, well, what evidence do you offer? Well, they'll say things like you mentioned, well, horses are faster than they used to be, or men are taller now than they used to be, or birds migrate farther, or antibiotics, germs are more resistant to antibodies now than used to be, as if that's evidence of evolution. But they're still horses, they're still men, they're still birds, they're still bacterium, and all of that. There is variation.
Yes.
So what they're citing are examples of horizontal variation, as if it was evidence of one kind turning into another.
Yes.
And the evolutionist is faced with a problem, because he has to, if he's going to identify himself with that camp, then he has to accept pretty much a whole litany of things, including one you mentioned, that we can trace our ancestry back through the apes and a common ancestor with hummingbirds and killer whales and pond scum, and they'd really like for you to stop right there, but ultimately you have to force them, and they'll admit to the Big Bang, where there's nothing but hydrogen gas. So
yes,
we can go back to hydrogen gas as on the ancestral tree. If you're an evolutionist, you must. Hydrogen to humans. Well, that takes an awful lot of faith to believe that stuff. And I pity them. I don't know how hard their life must be. You know, the Bible says the way of the transgressor is hard.
It is hard.
And I believe that.
And you and I both have, in younger years, decades past, been in a philosophic position of, at least emotionally and academically in our studies, adopting evolutionary concept, and it was trauma.
It was. It's not a happy existence.
No, that's correct.
The end game does not look pretty.
So we have great compassion for those still in the throes of the conflict.
As evidence of motivated to come and do programs like this. We have nothing to gain personally if someone...
We're not making anything from this.
...comes to know the Lord and gets on the path to heaven. I mean, you know, it's no skin off our teeth in a way, whether they do or they don't, other than the fact that we love our fellow man.
Yes, we do.
We desire to see the best for them. We'd be willing to pray for them at a football game for safety on the way home.
Certainly.
You see, and yet the atheists among us say, no, you can't have prayer even in those settings. And, you know, what's the harm of it?
Tragic. Well, let's get to the heart and share some of this information and help to straighten someone out and clarify the issues.
You know, the popular magazines and periodicals now will not leave this issue alone.
Correct.
So I would resist anyone trying to get us to just be quiet about it and just stay in the church and just preach Bible stories or something like that, because this is where the culture is. And the recent issue of Time magazine, I mean, almost every month or periodically, how apes became human. And, you know, I ask the question sometimes, who's your daddy?
Yes.
Was your daddy Ardipithecus ramidus cadabra? I sometimes think these long names are dreamed up just to sound intimidating, where, well, if it sounds intelligent, it must be intelligent.
There must be scholarship behind it, but not necessarily so.
Exactly. What a new discovery tells scientists about how our oldest ancestors stood on two legs and made an evolutionary leap. If I had the whole magazine, I'd show you what the article actually produces as evidence. A single toe bone that was found 10 miles from the rest of the skeleton.
Now, say that again. The evidence, we're talking about sleight of hand.
Just a little toe bone that is found, according to the article, 10 miles away from the rest of the skeleton, and this is, with a straight face, presented as good objective science.
It is not. It is sleight of hand.
Exactly.
Yes.
Well,